Hoekom?
Hallo julle, hallo Sean.
Hi Lisel.
Hoekom is my PowerPoint nou daar? Daar sy. Okay.
En nou kan jy nie meer vir Sean sê nie.
Nee.
Jy... Nee, wat het gaan?
Hier kom Dion nou.
Okay.
Good morning. Sorry, I thought it was at 10 o'clock and I saw it's 9:45. Sorry about that.
Niks moeilikheid nie. Ten minste, maar jy's nou hierso.
Hier is ek. Hier is ek.
Alright. Ek nou net Sean, jy kan ons nog mooi hoor, né?
100% Johan.
Ja, okay.
Ek Sean kan Afrikaans praat.
Dion, ja, nee, ek het geen verskoning nie. As gevolg van sy van Rademeier, toets ek hom elke keer en elke keer kom hy deur.
Ja, julle moet verstaan, ek het Pretoria skool gegaan, hè.
Hey, tough life. Sorry, Sean.
Waar was jy op skool gewees, Sean?
Ek was vir 2 jaar daar by Affies en toe trek ek Johannesburg toe, ja.
Jy het nou pas die reël gebreek, want die reël is, hoe weet jy ouers in Affies? Hy sê
Ek vertel jy.
Ja, nou ek het jou gevra. Ek het jou gevra, so dis nou anders sê.
Dion, ek het nou net vir Sean gesê, so ons gaan kort, ek gaan net so 'n inleiding gee, my gewone, jy weet, toespraakie gee, want dis eintlik die state of the company waarvan ons hierso praat. En 'n idee gee. Ek begin ook met 'n kort klein video wat julle heel moontlik al gesien het, net om die ouens te laat weet waar ons is en dinge gaan nie so maklik as wat dit miskien mag lyk nie. So dan gaan ek deur die state of the company, noem 'n paar punte. Ek gaan nie groot grafieke en goed doen nie. Ek identifiseer 'n paar individuele punte to set the tone en dan gaan ons praat. Dan gaan ek oorgaan en julle welkom heet en op 'n call gaan ons dan begin kyk na die verskillende punte wat ek nou in daai boodskap hier deurgestuur het. Dis nie op ons PowerPoint nie, maar dis net in daai volgorde gaan ons praat oor daai punte. So net vir 'n maklike verwysing. En dan op die skerm gaan die punte een na die ander verskyn en ons gaan spontaan daarop reageer. Ek dink Sean het baie interessante inligting om met ons te deel wat dit betref en Dion, ek dink jy ook, jy weet, wat die ding net meer eenvoudig maak as 'n gesprek oor die algemeen en waarheen gaan ons mark en hoe opgewonde ons agente behoort te wees om op hierdie oomblik eiendomsagente te wees. Ek sien dit natuurlik ook as 'n situasie dat hulle bitter gelukkig moet wees dat hulle eiendomsagente kan wees en dat hulle gelukkig moet wees. Jy weet, daar's nie iets anders nie. Hulle is nie meer gebless as ander mense omdat hulle eiendomsagente is nie. Of meer geseën as ander mense nie. Hulle is suiwer gelukkig om eiendomsagente te wees. Maar ons moet hierdie geleentheid benut. En dit is 'n redelike spesiale plek om te wees. So as die meisies om ons reg is, dan kan ek met my storie begin aan hierdie kant.
Okay.
Dis reg, Johan?
So ek wag vir Natasha, sy gaan nou vir my.
Okay.
Sy gooi my gewoonlik met 'n lepel of 'n pot of 'n ding en dan weet ek dis nou reg. Julle weet nie hoe kwaai sy regtig is nie, nee.
Nee, ek dink ek weet. Ek het al gesien.
Julle ken so 'n vriendelike klein dogtertjie, maar eintlik kan ek julle verseker, dis 'n front.
Dion, maar julle mark terwyl ons wag, julle mark moes al lekker opgetel het daar in die Garden Route met almal wat besluit nou hulle kan van die huis af werk.
Ja, ek wil juist nou vandag net kyk of ek nog finaal kan links maak tussen, jy weet, waar ons nou is en waar ons was. Ek dink as 'n market center self is ons 'n bietjie jonk, so dis moeilik om te sê en ons het ook nou deur 'n proses van vinnige groei gegaan as 'n market center. So uiteraard is ons syfers baie beter as wat dit was. Maar ons syfers is baie beter as wat dit was en jy weet ons het 'n redelike jong lot agente en ek moet sê ons doen oor die algemeen goed. So daar's definitief is 'n beweging wat mense hiernatoe trek nou. Ek dink dit is wat dieselfde wat gebeur in PE byvoorbeeld ook. Mense nou sien dat nou ons het byvoorbeeld op 'n stadium Sean het ons Hermanus ook gehad, maar ons het nie nou meer daai market center en ek dink dit sal baie interessant wees om te sien wat nou ook daar gebeur in Hermanus. Ja, hierdie hele tuinroete, jy weet, van Plet af tot in klein dorpie. Nie net Plet en Nysna en George.
Cape St. Francis en Mossel Bay, so
Ja, Riversdal, Heidelberg, sulke klein plekkies, jy weet, is ook besig om
Rooi Els, De Kelders, al die plekke het 'n oplewing. Dis baie interessant. Die trokke is besig, die manne vervoer meubels. Interessant, ons gaan nou lekker daaroor gesels. So dink bietjie, want ons wil soveel as moontlik markte oopmaak vir die eiendomsagente. Hulle moet begin dink wat om raak te sien in die mark. Daai klas van reaksie wil ek graag uit ons gesprek hê. Jy weet, so ouens kyk hulle vas teen sy markie. En Keller Williams gee ons hulle die geleentheid om baie wyer is dit te werk. Ja, hy bly altyd die local expert en jy gaan sien ons gaan vandag afsluit met die local expert, want dit is waar jy jouself vestig as die mens met wie ander mense wil praat. Maar as gevolg van dit vat dit jou ook na Hermanus of Rooi Els of George toe. En dis die geleentheid wat ons moet identifiseer. Alright, so ek gaan gou begin. Ek dink ons is reg. Hierdie is nou môremiddag 3:30. Bill Sotroff het nou net voor ons gepraat en vir ons vertel hoe ongelooflik Keller Williams is, hoe baie mense het aangesluit reg oor die wêreld en dat daar geen ander maatskappy soos hierdie is nie. So ek sê, good afternoon ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me. And what I appreciate more than anything else is that you're on the front seat. For this family reunion, there will be no back seats, only front row seats, which to me is very exciting. And while you are on a screen away, you can now take your mask off, please. So most of us know what golf is about. Here is a little video of what 2020 was like. The COVID pandemic has created a war zone that has not left anybody on earth untouched, some physically and others economically. The scale of this effect is bigger than what we have ever been exposed to before. People have spoken of the trenches of business before, and it's now combined with the trenches of COVID war. Hospitals and cemeteries are dealing with record cases daily, and while that is happening, life must go on. We have to do everything we can to survive the onslaught from the pandemic and our own financial situation. We have each to find the safest place we can be while the world is trying to survive as best it can be. We are Keller Williams and we are estate agents. We have shown incredible resilience in the past and we will keep on doing so in the future. Our company is designed to be the safe place for estate agents, to be the company that provides opportunities for growth and building businesses. We are estate agents with a plan, and we have what it takes to execute that plan. Our vision is to provide this opportunity to every person interested in being an estate agent and to have estate agents building careers worth having, businesses worth owning, lives worth living, experience worth giving, and legacies worth leaving. In short, living a life worth living. According to Stats SA, it was the steepest economic contraction since at least 1990. As the pandemic's negative impact extended the recession into a fourth quarter. This has been the longest period of consecutive quarterly contraction since 1992. The whole country sector saw severe contraction, in particular construction, manufacturing, mining, transport, storage and communication, trade, catering, accommodation. And yet the residential real estate has so far surprised many with its resilience. Our residential property market has rebounded sooner than many have expected. The pandemic seems to have created an unexpected momentum supported by a 50-year low interest rate. Technology is becoming a defining factor of our business environment, and the lockdown certainly pushed the benefits of technology to the forefront. Joining me to talk about our property market is Dion ter Blanche, operating principal at KW Eden, and CEO of Multinet, Shaun Rademeier. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Johan.
Good afternoon, Johan. Hello, Shaun.
We will be discussing the points that is driving this resurgence in our industry. Very welcome, gentlemen. We are in a completely different world relative to the beginning of last year, this time. From March onwards, we were making plans to survive the uncertainties of the pandemic, and we expected that our industry will, with all the others, enter a devastating time. In April, we projected that our industry will begin a downturn of about 30 to 60% by December, depending who you spoke to, but that has not happened. Quite the opposite. Let's have a look at the state of your company. So here you can see that 2019 was our best year ever, and 17% bigger and better as far as GCI was concerned than 2018. But what's amazing, 2020 came to within 1% of the record year. Not what was expected in March and April last year. The average income per month of the last 6 months of 2020 was 10% higher. Remember, the average income per month of the last 6 months was each 10% higher than the record month of 2019. And the record month of 2020 was 25% higher than the record month of 2019. And remember, we're talking about the month or the year that was supposed to be in total ruins. 8 of the 12 months in 2020 had a higher GCI than in 2019. 4 of the months in 2020 bettered the record month of 2019. January 2020 was the best January ever. Showed signs for a fantastic 2020. And then came February, and it was 36% up on February 2019. Best February ever. Then came March. These offers scaled down, things didn't go through. Yet, March was 5% up on the March of 2019. And then the big drop hit. But August, we came back, and it was the best August ever. And that was still a strange time. We didn't realize what was really going on. And we thought it was just a bubble building up, and all the transfers that were in process being processed. So September came, and registrations for GCI was up 37%. Again, best September ever. Best October ever, 39% up. Best November, 47% up. Best December, 19% up. That is what created a very strange 2020 for us. And luckily, we're in real estate. If we take the last 6 months of every year since 2016 in Keller Williams, just the last 6 months of every year to see how it builds up momentum into the next year. This graph will give you an idea of what it looked like from 2016 to 2020. So with this in mind, can you get an idea of what's going to happen in 2021? The same with the unit sales. This is what the market looks like and what we are waiting for to extend on as far as real estate is concerned. Now here you can see the different industries were supposed to respond. The blue shows the sink in relative to 2019, and the red, the response to COVID. So there was supposed to be some contraction in most of the industries. Some of them, transport and trade and catering, didn't show much of a contraction. But look at what really happened. And right on the right-hand side, you can see real estate. So from 2019 to 2020, a contraction was identified or expected of about 12%. Then a final figure was entered of about 25%. And I've just shown you how we counted that in our business. So as we look back on our business, we saw a totally different picture. And if there's one industry that I would like to be in at this moment, it's real estate. Sean, Dion, can you explain what has happened and why is the real estate industry in conflict with the economy?
So Johan, Gary in Shift says that in good times, we do not succeed because of what we do right, but in spite of what we do wrong sometimes. And it would be easy for us to pat ourselves on the shoulders and say, this is all due to our brilliance. Although I think we've done some good work, but as you so rightly pointed out, also in our own market center, we saw through the board, we saw unbelievable numbers ever since the strict lockdown ended in when was that? March, April, May, and really only June. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we've had many months, it's still going on now, where the deeds offices are opened and closed very regularly because of COVID cases in the deeds office or related COVID cases and all of that. And yet, despite all of that, we are still looking at this. So I think the easy answer would be to say that, and this is what we all expected. We all expected a short correction, an improvement after strict lockdown ended with pent-up demand, essentially. Obviously, nobody could really buy. Yes, there were still a few transactions, but we all had to do it on a virtual basis. We couldn't take people out to properties to view properties. It was difficult to get contracts signed, and you know that the law still requires contracts to be signed by hand, OTPs. So all of that, we thought that there was going to come a correction after strict lockdown was lifted, and there would be a quick correction, and then it would fall down in accordance with what you're seeing on the screen right now. And that wasn't what happened. So it seems to us that the pent-up demand combined with a number of other things, such as the fact that interest rates were at and still are at their lowest in about 60 years, that obviously had a major effect on many of our businesses. But then also, I think with what COVID brought about, it sort of sped up everything that we were expecting to take place over the next few years. It sped up and it sort of concentrated that in a short few months. And I think that's something that we can explore further now in this discussion, but this was not what we expected. I don't think anybody in property really expected this. So we'll take it, but it also means that we have to, gird ourselves, because obviously at some stage it does look like the market might turn. And if it does, we can be ready for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're in for interesting times. I don't think we're the blessed industry. I think we're the lucky industry, and we've got to make hay while the sun shines. Sean, what do you say?
You need to, if you look at an economic perspective of what the South African economy has gone through, COVID, as bad as it is, has got a silver lining for South Africa. The first thing is that our debt to GDP ratio exceeded that 75% mark. And I mean, we're expecting it to go close to the 85, even 90%. And, if we were in a pre-COVID environment, the world would have seen that as a massive negative for an emerging market to be in such debt. But because of COVID, we've seen a lot of these countries now go in excess of 100% debt to GDP. And it's almost become the norm, which has given us the ability to escape, that negative impact. The second thing is if you look at the Rand itself, the Rand is extremely undervalued in a world economy. They recently did the McDonald's index. And for everyone that wants to know, what they do is they take a McDonald's burger across the world and they have a look at what the value of buying a Big Mac is in America and in Australia, and then they compare your currency's actual strength. And if we compare that, the rand actually needs to trade to the dollar at about 7 rand to the dollar. So it's a very lucrative currency for international investors to put their money in. And you can think about property. I mean, if you are buying South African property at 15 to the dollar, but it's actually worth 7, you're getting the property at almost 50% cheaper than what your currency can actually buy it. You know, and the international community is seeing that. But all of that aside, the big thing that has caused our market to shift this way is the interest rates. You know, we've seen not a big growth in the 0 to 750,000 rand market, but the market between the million and the 2 million has seen an exponential growth. And that has given us our increase in rand value. I mean, you can imagine that someone buying a property for 1.5 million is 2 of first-time home buyers 750,000 properties. So the interest rate has most certainly brought a new perspective into our industry. And we suspect that that interest rate will stay stable for the next, 6 to 7 months until we see inflation rates start changing. Now, when we see that happening, the property industry needs to take note. If inflation starts going above the 4.5%, 5% mark, the SARB will eventually start putting interest rates up, and that will see a downward demand in that market segment of where people are buying between 1.5 and 2 million. Not because they won't be able to afford it, but I think the sentiment will just be not as what it is now with a low interest rate cycle. So for us, what we've seen is the psyche of the South African market has changed. Everyone has said it's the best time to buy. You're going to get a rate never seen before in the last 50 years, and you can potentially bargain because of the COVID environment. And that's caused a massive growth for us, and hopefully we see it for another 8 to 9 months until the market starts normalizing.
It's very interesting, Sean, the way that we all look at life and real estate has changed. We always said location was the most important part of real estate, and it will always be, but relative to what? So in the past, it was location for most people meant somewhere close to work to make life more easy and bearable and traffic easy and convenient. So close to work was the key. Today, location is more about quality of life and convenience. And now with technology, that is playing into the hands, and COVID has expedited that whole process of taking work to where you are, where people are. Some people prefer to go out and work from their homes, and some businesses force their people now to work from their homes. It's in total conflict or contrast with what we are used to. So it's a completely different market that it's emerging.
Yeah, I actually spoke to Dion about it. And Dion, maybe you can comment on the amount of people that are now interested in buying a home down in the Garden Route.
So we've always had in the Garden Route, and I was one of them, we've always had what's called the super commuters. That was back in the day where on a Friday or a Thursday afternoon or morning, if you or Monday even, if you fly to Joburg, for example, all the same people would be on that plane. Obviously, we all go from George and we fly to Joburg and then we get back. What has happened though is that with COVID coming now and we all having to work from home, I think that's one of the things that got condensed into a very short period of time. We had to get used to things like what we are doing now, online meetings, working remotely and so forth. And it got to the point, I think, where many people understood that this is indeed a possibility. And not only that, it's something, it's ideal, it's what they want. So the number of what we used to call the super commuters have now increased. This is true for the Garden Route. This would be true for places like, they are moving outside of the old cities, or what we used to understand as the cities where you would work. I remember having stayed and worked, for example, in Joburg. It took me an hour and a half every day just to get to work. Well, that looks sort of silly now, doesn't it? Because we can work from our homes, we can work remotely. And that had a major effect on our property market in the Garden Route as well. We're close to an airport here. So if there are any meetings that our people have to attend, then they will go and they will fly. But for the most part, even that commute over weekends or weeks and over weekends getting back, that has gone down. And that made it possible for lots of people to look at all sorts of other places, places like the Garden Route, places outside of the cities. The cities have a certain allure in certain respects, but if you can have a quality of life, if you can be in a slower pace sort of town where there's fast internet and you can work from home, you can be close to your family, you don't have to sit in traffic every single day. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do that? And I think that was one of the things where we thought that would take the next 10 years probably. That was condensed into a few months where many people are looking at what's happening now. So for example, I'm just looking at our numbers. Our registered units in 2020 went up by 35% over the year. Now that is in the COVID year. And just remember, that was also the year when the deeds office was almost closed more than it was open. But still, our registered units went up by 35%. Excuse me. Our volume went up by 61%, but even all of that, even the listings that we are taking went up. So to a certain extent, it's easy to understand. People could look at other living arrangements now, and they are. To another extent, there's also still some things in this market that we've got to sort out and understand. Where is the equilibrium now? Where is it that we'll find that sweet spot in the market? Is it a seller's market? Is it a buyer's market? It certainly looks like it still is a buyer's market, but I think it's moving to that point where it might soon be also a seller's market, because obviously lots of stock is being taken up. As I said to you, listings taken, it went up, but registered units went up also. So yeah, interesting times that we are living in. I'm glad to be in the Garden Route, and I'm pretty sure that many of my colleagues in some of the other market centers are also happy to be in some of these more remote areas. But in saying that, we also see that our colleagues in the cities also had a great year. So, this was a very forgiving market to a certain extent. And I take your point, Johan. I think this is a good time to be in property.
I thought you were busy advertising the Garden Route now.
Yeah, I was about to ask for your listings, Dion.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's another market that is coming to the fore. And what is interesting, we're very aware of that market. But the 2020 is really known now as the first-time buyers market. And interesting, our strongest push by female buyers under the age of 35. This is now according to F&B. They say that 43% of the buyers in 2020 with first-time home buyers, and that was up 5% from the year before. Is that also your experience, guys?
Yeah, maybe just from our side, Johan. So your first-time buyers most certainly has an impact on the market. But if you look at the overall market growth, I mean, we were up 62%. So even though as an originator, around about 79% of all our applications are first-time buyers, I still believe that we've seen a balance in people that were previously homeowners that climbed out years ago and were renting are now coming back into the market. And they're unfortunately not classified as first-time home buyers because they've owned a property somewhere in their life before. But if we had to have a look at all the consumers that have not owned a property in the last 5 years that have now come back into the market, we believe there's a big push for that. And that's why you're seeing that market growth between the 1.2 and the 2 million bracket so much higher than the first-time home market. I mean, if F&B says 5% growth, we've seen a 64% application growth in that middle market segment. And I think that's a re-entrance of old customers coming back into the market.
Interesting one, because they were all staying in homes, which means there's a conflict situation developing here. So suddenly
I feel sorry for the landlords, Johan. I feel sorry for the landlords.
So rentals have got two sides now. Yes. So the tenants turning buyers and leaving the rental market, leaving a massive hole in that market, because those were the credible tenants. So yes, the whole rental market is now under pressure on the one side, and yet we're happy to see it happening as sales agents. But it's part of the business. So what do you say? What's happening? What's going to happen here?
John, I'm not giving this as advice. I am telling you what we are doing. So I also had that question: is our improved numbers, is it mainly driven by first-time buyers? yes, to a certain extent, it is strongly driven by first-time buyers. But what we are finding is, as I said, not only did the number of registrations go up, but also the volume went up by more than double that. So it means that we got more registrations, but at a much higher volume, which tells you that it's sold at a higher volume. So what we are finding is that, more expensive properties are certainly still selling. That said, we do have people buying in some of the other areas, places that are a bit further away from our market center. I think if you look at the stats, it does look like this whole move away from the rentals to the sales, or from tenants becoming buyers to a certain extent, because obviously, if you can now, instead of paying somebody else's bond, you can pay off your own bond, and it will be at the same, price, or maybe even lower in some cases. Of course, there are other costs that you have to bear in mind, things like maintenance and upkeep and that sort of thing. But still, it is driven very strongly by a certain segment. So I said, I'm not giving advice, but I will tell you this: we are selling our rental book because, as Sean said, that is not the business that I want to be in now. We can start another rental book later, but for now, we're going to focus on this market while it's hot.
If I could, Johan, if I would give the landlords any advice, is the reason why tenants are moving out is because of the price discrepancy. Where you were renting a property for 10,000 Rand a month, you can now buy for 7,000 Rand a month.
Yeah.
And that rental discrepancy, the landlords will have to address. Otherwise, they're going to lose their tenants. So where the landlords got let's say they've got a bond on their property and they did get the reduction in rates because of the interest rates coming down, they should pass that on to the rental, the consumer renting, because that's going to cause the consumer to reconsider buying. If the price difference is 1,000 or maybe 500 Rand, to go through all that hassle of transfer fees and moving, maybe it's just better to stay where they are. And I think that's the advice I would give to landlords. Take the brunt of that now. And when the interest rate starts increasing again, and the consumers don't find it as easy to get finance from the banks, you will still keep them in your property. So it's about a 2-year process, I believe, for them to maintain the people in their properties, take a bit of a cut, and then eventually make up that deficit as the years go on.
Which, Sean, just on the note, I think that's one of the things that's quite interesting, because what you're saying is that landlords, and I think so many of them have taken the brunt already, which is probably the reason why not only do you get more buyers or tenants becoming buyers, but also more at the very same time landlords becoming sellers.
Yeah.
I know that many landlords through COVID had to, get to some sort of arrangement with their tenants. And certainly what we are seeing is that many of the properties that are getting onto the market now is exactly that second or third investment sort of property that landlords used to own, but now, due to COVID and bad payment, non-payment, vacancy, whatever, they'd rather put that on the market now. So as I said, we have an influx of buyers from the tenant side, but we also have an influx of listings from the landlord side, purely because many people now are getting to a point where, they simply cannot afford it anymore. And obviously that influx of listings into the market is also putting downward pressure on prices that sellers can achieve.
Yeah, you're right, Dion. And I think we must also, you made a comment about, buyers and sellers market. The banks have made the decision that this year there's probably not going to be any more payment holidays. So as we see the influx of the rental stock coming to the market, we're going to see influx of the quick sell programs and the help you sells from the bank. And we will probably see very soon another buyer's market, even bigger buyer's market than what we're seeing now. Which again for us as real estate agents is great, because the market is busy. I remember, real estate doesn't work when the market is okay. The market either needs to be up or down, and then we really work well. And, for the next year or two, I think being in real estate, as Johan said in the beginning, is probably the best industry to be with at the moment. We're going to see a lot of action
for a while.
Absolutely. We don't like it when the market is stable. It doesn't help.
That is very, very true. I've known of people, we're talking about retirement now, that's been waiting for years and years to really start to retire because they were waiting for their houses to sell. Now, number one, to have a house available to sell the day when you go on retirement is a very good idea. And that's something that people need to understand and really value. But it's also a part of a big drive of our real estate agency business in South Africa. The retirement business is absolutely booming at this moment. It's a massive market. So to get people to understand, have that house when you retire, and don't be a tenant when you need to retire, is a big difference as far as your life and your quality of life is concerned. What do you say about that?
Johan, it seems every other day there's a new development being launched or planned to be launched in areas like ours, for example. Always joked and said that the garden route is also the retirement route because there are so many retirees moving to this area. But it makes a lot of sense for the very same reasons that so many people are moving to work remotely now. They don't want to be in those cities. They want to have the higher quality of life. And these areas that provide it to them. So there are many new retirement villages being built, not only in the garden route but also all over South Africa. And I know some of them are really, that it's almost like a new sort of approach to retirement. What we are seeing, obviously, there's always the frail care facilities. There's lots of other things in terms of medical facilities and all of those things. But what we're also seeing with the retirement facilities or the developments now is that there's more a focus on sort of a holistic approach where these retirement villages are often slightly larger. They provide a lot of other things in terms of lifestyle, things like, for example, the nature, or people can walk around. There are cycling routes or there are walking lanes and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of that where people now retired seem slightly, I don't want to say sooner or younger, but they are retiring with the idea that there's still life left there. So when they are retiring, they want to be in places where it's nice, it's friendly, it's healthy, it's, it takes care of them from 50 or 60 and a healthy 60 and a healthy 70 to 80, 90, where they, obviously they need more frail care facilities. So there's a lot of that. I think that drives the market quite strongly in terms of new developments, also in areas like ours, for example.
Yeah, no question. And it's very interesting how in a very short period of time, the buyer's profile has changed.
Yeah.
People that never thought of selling are now selling to buy something else. People that didn't think of buying, we've just discussed that, is now looking for a house to buy. So the profiles, the reason to buy and sell is suddenly very real, and the property is available and the availability of money is suddenly very real. So it's just interesting how it plays into the hand of the estate agent at this moment. But I think at the forefront of what makes absolutely everything now a reality, and that is, making that line between virtual and real a bit more vague than ever before. Because here I sit and you think I sit within a nice white room with what you focus on expands behind me. But if I turn around, that's not true. So I project something that's not actually true, but I'm real. Here it is. So where's this borderline between reality and virtual? Now, this is where technology comes in. And this is where Gary Keller is hitting the nail on the head all the time, and has been doing so for quite a while. Because he says we're a technology company, and we've got to utilize this opportunity to build our lives. Do we really understand that, Dion, Sean?
Johan, so again, as an estate agent, the interesting thing is, of course, the background that you see here, this is indeed my apartment. So I just want to make it clear, this is what my house looks like. It is an interesting time, but sometimes I think we tend to overthink what it means for the individual estate agent to lean into technology. So some of the things that happened was obviously this sort of thing, and yes, we had to adapt. There's no doubt about that. I don't know about you, for example, but you see in lockdown when it started and we had all these online, the Zooms and virtual meetings and Google Meets and whatever, it sort of drains you to a certain extent, and then you start adapting to it, because if you've had a day with 8 of these meetings, it sort of drains you and you think, but why is that? And I think to a certain extent, there are challenges in the sense that communication is slightly different. I am indeed, as I'm talking to you now, looking into a camera, but here you are on my screen slightly below me. So it's almost as if, you can't really see that quick twitch in somebody's eye or the way that they, position their body or that sort of thing. So there's certain adaptation required, no doubt. But that's what we do as human beings. We adapt. And it seems that we've done that to a large extent. Now, I'm pretty sure there will be longer term, adaptation required from us. But as far as business is concerned, what we could control was just the way that we reached out and still, brought that humanity, that personal touch to our clients, for example. So many of our agents would, they would make we call it the care calls. We would make those calls to our clients. We would get them back onto our databases. We would sort of revive those databases. And I would like to think that many of those things, just making contact with your client again. Sure, maybe it's in a format like this. And maybe the discussion is something along the lines of, sure, I haven't spoken to you in such a long time, but how are you doing? How's it going now? What are you doing? Is there anything I can do? And just that sort of, reaching out to people. So yeah, sure, a lot of technology took over, but to a certain extent, it was to still bring that human touch. And in doing so, I think that's why we saw our listings increase. In fact, Sean, you said I'm bragging. Let me brag one more time. Our listings taken has gone up by 84%, and our listings taken volume has gone up by almost 200%. I'd like to, and that was in 2020 compared to 2019. I'm talking year to date. I'd like to think that was because of these things. So yeah, we have to lean into technology, and it's wonderful that Keller Williams provides this for us. But we must remember we're still in a people business, and if we can get that right with our clients and our agents with their clients, I think we're winning.
Interesting, Dion, because what you say is we're talking about different areas, and we're talking about an estate agent. And the focus of the estate agent is that local place. It's a local business. You're amongst people that start to get to know you and understand you and trust you. We call that the local expert. That's where people go to. Whether they go to the surgeon or the doctor or the auditor or the lawyer, they go to their local expert. And the same with an estate agent, the local expert. And this is where our business is gelling or joining technology and giving you the opportunity to, from that point, that focus point there, explode to right across the country. So we are in for a very interesting year, a very exciting year, I think. And it starts with the estate agent working in these areas. We've turned the business around. We don't focus on the brand because we know now that the brand is the agent and the agent is the brand, because without the local expert being supported by his clients, there is no brand, there is no big business. So that person there that is working under his name, powered by Keller Williams, is what our business is about. So we need professionals in this business. We need the right people to set the standards in our environment, to utilize the technology through which we're going to grow. And with that, I would like to ask you two gentlemen to end off this session for us.
Yeah, I think just from our side, Johan, everyone talks about how to disrupt the real estate industry. And I think technology companies have been looking at this for the last 3 years. And where Keller Williams is, and where I'm proud to be associated with the brand as well, is that you are combining that technology play of disruption with a traditional estate agent. And with that formula, there's no one that can take that over, because, if you are someone that built relationships with the tools that makes you great in your market area, there's absolutely the sky's the limit for you. So continue on the way you're going, and we're very proud to be associated with Keller Williams.
Thank you very much, Sean. Dion, you've got the last word.
Thank you, Johan. From my side, I would say, just based on what you just mentioned with the local expert, and this is something I saw in my own career, before you can win big, you have to win small. In other words, that means that you have to become the local expert, become well known, specialized in an area. Obviously in Keller Williams, we don't allocate areas to people. They can choose for themselves in their own businesses. But you do need to be that local expert, because that's what your clients require you to do now, or to be now. That is what they are looking at you for. And as estate agents, that means that our role has now been elevated even more. When you talk about the stats for the country, it's almost like talking about the weather for the country. There's no one temperature all across South Africa, but there is a certain temperature in Mossel Bay and in Johannesburg and in Cape Town. What Keller Williams with our technology is doing, I think, is to take that agent and still put him in the center of that real estate transaction. And any sort of disruption almost always seems to take them away from that center of the transaction. All these aggregation companies, all these, where the big portals are providing assistance, even when they do things, let's say like Zillow in the United States, where they provide things like valuations on properties and all that sort of thing. I think if the agent can still see themselves as that local expert, obviously supported by the technology to provide that support, also on a larger scale to more people, in other words, they're still in a good place. And I think Keller Williams provides that to them. And similar to what Sean said, I wouldn't be anywhere else. This is where I think we can make that happen still.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate every moment. Keep well until we talk again. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Johan.
Awesome. Dis al, sal jy die livestream van stop?